It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hello, Arkansas. Welcome to the program. Good morning, everybody out there. It is time. It's Tuesday. It's week number 5 of the Arkansas Legislative session, the 92nd General Assembly. And so, as always, we got Mr. Josh Waters on the line. We're going to go over the Week 5 Conduit Scorecard. Josh, welcome back to the show, sir. How are you?
Oh, hey, Paul. Good morning. I'm doing good.
Yeah, well, awesome. So let's just kind of get right to it. We've got the graphic. We're ready. Let's go and throw this up there. Normally, we start with support bills, and I know there's only 2 bills that are on the scorecard this week. We're going to start with a bill that is opposed. What can you tell us about SB 336, HJR 1018, and SJR 14? So I guess it's 3 bills, but it's all part of one highway tax package.
That's right, Paul. You know, you've been covering it. It was announced last week. This is the highway tax hike plan, and these are the 3 bills or 1 bill and a constitutional amendment that would raise people's taxes here in Arkansas. They'd be paying more through all items through extension of a half-cent sales tax. Be paying more for items that are transport because there's also a diesel tax increase, and overall over $4 billion in tax revenue spent on highway maintenance over the next 10 years under this plan.
Wow. So it's actually, I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, if we're looking at these pieces of legislation, does it does it spend money we don't have? Does it increase dependency on government? Does it grow the size of government? Well, taking more money from the people is a growth in government, and so it's very, very easy to oppose on that ground, right?
Yeah, you know, this is the classic spending money we don't have. The money's not there, and so they're, instead of cutting spending somewhere else and prioritizing roads with current funds, they're going out and they're going to be raising taxes. So it is 2 different measures, and so Senate Bill 336, that's the bill that will go through. It's going to be coming through the Senate side, and it's supposed to be heard actually tomorrow in the Revenue and Tax Committee. But what that bill would do is that's the tax increase. It's a new sales tax at the wholesale level on gas and diesel. And so it's a formula. It's kind of confusing, but at the end of the day, what it does, the way the math works out, people would be paying 3 cents more per gallon for gas, and then 6 cents more per gallon for diesel. The bill also, Paul, for anyone listening that's driving this morning, if they have a hybrid car or electric vehicle, not too many electric vehicles, but a lot of people have a hybrid car, they're going to have to be paying $100 more per year as a new registration fee under this proposed bill.
Okay, let's take this kind of one at a time. Let's back up here because there's a lot of hidden costs here that maybe we don't even realize. Now, one of those you mentioned, if you're talking about it's more expensive for trucks that use diesel, they're going to be paying more. So you say that, does that mean some of the goods and stuff that we buy at stores could go up because now the cost to transport those goods has gone up?
Yep, that's exactly right. Anytime a tax is placed on a corporation such as a trucking line, a trucking company, those costs are passed on to consumers. So whatever the additional cost is going to cost to transport these items, at the end of the day, when they're sitting on the shelf, the price of those is going to go up. And that's just from the diesel tax increase. Those items will also be more expensive because they're going to be hot. Currently, right now, there's a sales tax increase that was passed, set to expire. This would put an indefinite, permanent sales tax increase on the board. So it's kind of a double, triple, quadruple whammy when you're seeing this. As you're driving to go get your new items, you're going to be paying more. Once you get there, you're going to be paying more. And when you're driving home, you're going to be paying more. So that's the gist, of the plan. It's a tax hike. There's some funds that are diverted from casino revenue that's going to be coming in. That's part of the bill. But the big pieces there are the gas tax increase.
Wow. So this would raise, I'm looking here at the Tax Foundation. They've got a map here, and I know maps were important when it comes to the income tax, but we've got the highest gas tax in the region, or of the states that surround us right now at 21. Let's see here. Well, it's number 40. I'm having trouble reading this number here. 21.80. Okay. So 21.80 cents. And this would bring it up to 24.4 cents per gallon for regular gas and 28.5 cents for diesel. Is that correct, Josh?
Yes.
Okay. And then you talk about the registration fees, $100 for hybrid vehicles. If you have an electric vehicle, $200 a year. Yeah, so again, just kind of come back to the principles here. It's an easy bill to oppose if it's going to raise more money from the people. And I want to point out here, that, over at conduitnews.com, you reference the, let's see here, Arkansas Democrat Gazette is saying right now the average person in Arkansas is paying $318 a year for highway maintenance. And we're giving almost $1 billion right now. We're already giving the government almost $1 billion to build our highways. And that's not enough, apparently. So, I mean, when you look at those optics, it's like, it kind of feel like we're at a tipping point here where the citizens, I mean, how much can you actually tax the citizens of Arkansas? At what point is it just too much?
Yeah, this bill, unfortunately, it increases that overall tax burden. It's what people feel, right? And we already know the tax burden in Arkansas. When you look at it as a business tax climate, we're 46 out of 50. The worst state in the region, the worst state in the South, and the worst red state. And so, it just doesn't really line up. But this would increase the overall tax burden. What you're saying, we already pay $318 per person on roads, $1 billion annually. This would increase $414 million a year in addition to that billion that's already spent.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a massive, massive highway plan.
Yeah, it really is. And the correct number is actually $414 million. I know $300 million is thrown away or thrown out there, but that's only because if you only look at what the state's going to get. We have cities and counties that are going to get a lot of this money too. And here's the crux of it for me. I drive around on roads that I'm not happy with, and so there's going to be a lot of people, I think, who are tempted to say, okay, let's go ahead and do this because we want better roads. But I think I don't think you should trust the government to do that, because we're already giving them a lot of our money, and they are failing to build the roads with what we're already giving them, which is a lot. It is a lot of money. And so what makes any of us think that they're going to change their behavior? I mean, if they're not, and I wish, and I say this with all due respect, but if they're going to do this, and they're Republicans, and they're going to do this, I do feel like they owe the public an explanation, at least something to show us that says, hey, we've already cut this, still not enough. We've cut this, still not enough. We've looked at cutting this, but we can't. Where's that conversation, Josh?
Yeah, Paul, and that's kind of where we're at. There's been some tax cuts this session. There was an income tax cut, and that's good. But at the end of the day, if they cut taxes in one spot but raise them the same or more somewhere else, how is that overall burden, the amount of money that's going to government? What does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, that's what affects the economy. Will there be more people in people's pockets to start the economy, or will it be in government? And of course, I think there's a strong argument saying highways help the economy, but the numbers we're looking at here are just so massive. So these are two different measures. So procedurally, the bill, Senate Bill 336, that'll go through like a typical piece of legislation. It'll go through committee, through both chambers, and be voted up or down and then become law. Mm-hmm. Now, the other proposal, that would be extension of the half-cent sales tax increase. That would be a proposed constitutional amendment that is referred out to the people, so the people will have an opportunity, if this goes forward, to vote up or down on increasing, taxes on themselves to the tune of almost $300 million and almost $300 billion under just the proposed constitutional amendment.
I was going to say, so the proposed constitutional amendment, I thought that was closer to $200 million. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah. Well, $205 million is the state portion, and then $88 million is cities and counties.
There we go again. It's worked. It worked on me, Josh. It worked on me.
There you
go. So okay. So that is something. So that's $300 million right there. That if the people in 2020 say no, we don't want this. We want the sales tax to go down because it was set to expire back in 2012. I mean, that's a possibility here that happens. But here we do have, something that can kind of fuel the skepticism of people who, we want to trust government, and this is set to expire, but now that they've gotten used to the certain, amount of revenue from the people, they don't want to let it go, and so they're sending it back to us. It's funny, even when government is set to shrink, meaning less money to the government, which means it's set to shrink. It's in the statute. It's going to shrink if you just leave it alone. We have people that say no. We need to make sure that you really want it to shrink, even though it's already set to. So that's frustrating. So it's an easy bill to oppose. It's taking more money from the people. It's an increase in the size of government, and so it's understandable why Conduit opposes it just on those grounds alone. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in the committee tomorrow. Let's talk about a bill that made the scorecard, Josh. That Conduit is supporting. It is SB 308, civil asset forfeiture reform by Senator Bart Hester, a Republican, and State Representative Austin McCollum, also a Republican. What can you tell us about this bill?
Yeah, so this is a problem all over the country, the idea of civil asset forfeiture. And simplified, for people who might not know what that means, it's basically the government and law enforcement stealing people's stuff before they've ever been convicted of a crime. And so what happens is when someone's arrested, they'll seize assets such as a car, cash, guns, anything that they, in their just kind of discretion, think is part of a crime. Part of carrying out a crime. And so those assets are seized up front, and then basically the person then has to prove their innocence. And in America, we have a presumption of innocence, yet these civil asset forfeiture laws are on the books. So this bill, Paul, would flip that and say, hey, it makes it harder for government to steal people's stuff before being convicted of a crime. And this specific piece of legislation would require a person to first be convicted of a felony offense related to the property being seized. So move in the right direction for sure on civil asset forfeiture.
Yeah, that's something that's bothered me for a long time, civil asset forfeiture. So this bill by Senator Hester and Representative McCollum is a bill to protect private property, is really what it is.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Paul, the Institute for Justice studied states and how they rank basically on this civil asset forfeiture. And Arkansas got a D- grade. And when you look at the numbers, you might say, well, how much is this actually costing people? Over $80 million in assets from the people of Arkansas have been seized by the government since 2000 under this scheme, really, is how you can call it.
Yeah, there was one guy. Wasn't there one guy who was traveling through Arkansas trying to get to Memphis to buy a car, and he had like $10,000 on him, and he got pulled over for speeding, and they just took his $10,000, and he never got it back or something?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think I remember reading saying, well, no one, has that much cash on them unless it's drugs. Like, no, that's not how our laws work in America. We have a presumption of innocence. You can't just take people's money because you think it might be related to drugs, especially if they're showing and saying, hey, I'm going to buy this car over in Memphis. But, Paul, that's a real-world example. And so I think this is a good bill to say, hey, it has to be convicted of a felony offense related to the property being seized before they can see it. Now, there's an exception in there saying if it's part of it can still be forfeited meaning the government can still keep the assets if it's part of a negotiated plea agreement. So it's still kind of dangling their own property in front of them to get a plea agreement. So that's kind of questionable. But overall, it would improve the civil asset forfeiture scheme here in Arkansas under this bill.
Yeah, man, it kind of and this is the type of stuff, and I know it doesn't happen often, but you have local law enforcement that might be tempted to, use this money to fund their local department, and so it can kind of create a perverse incentive there. But it also, I think, when this happens, it's something that is hurting the reputation of law enforcement, because most of law enforcement is, they're fantastic, upstanding folks, and I'm glad that they're doing it, But it's stuff like this that I think doesn't need to happen, I mean, and if you go read up on, and I don't have the story in front of me, but if you go read up on this particular incident that happened in Arkansas, I mean, it's not like this gentleman didn't try to get his money back. I mean, he attempted. He went to court, and just it was a nightmare. It just to be able to get something that was rightfully his. So we have to be very careful. I mean, everybody was upset with Brett Kavanaugh and the way the media treated him. They treated him as being guilty, that you have to prove your innocence. Well, that's exactly what civil asset forfeiture is. You're having to prove your innocence, and there's no assumption that you are innocent, and that's the actual legal standard, is that you're innocent until proven guilty. Josh. Yeah,
it's kind of a bedrock of society. Don't hurt people and don't steal their stuff.
There we go.
Let's stick to that, and this bill works further towards that. Paul, part of this situation too, there's this perverse incentive for law enforcement to get this money, because they get to keep the money or the assets and sell the assets, and then use that money within that law enforcement agency. It's divvied up to different funds here in the state. I think some may go to the crime lab. So there's actually a perverse incentive to try to get even more and more assets that they can. Mm-hmm. So this bill is really neat. That number, $80 million taken away from people here in Arkansas since 2000, that's a big number.
Do you think that the Municipal League and the County Association of Counties, are they going to oppose this bill by Senator Hester and Representative McCollum?
I'm not sure. That they routinely, anything that's going to shrink government, they'll routinely lobby against it. And so if it means less money somehow going to a city or county somewhere in Arkansas, they might.
Yeah. Real quick, Josh, it is Scope Week.
Yes.
This is a big week in terms of deregulating, giving people more choice.
Yeah, it's a big week. I know you had Representative Eubanks on, and I know we talked last week or week before, Paul. It's so hard here in Arkansas. There's so many steps or guardrails put up to try to increase the scope of practice, to try to decrease regulation and occupational licensure. So this is the first week they can even really begin that process and debate in those public health committees. So they'll be doing that today. I know there's some special orders of business in the House Public Health Committee this morning, and then again on Thursday. And so, advanced practice nurses, that's going to be a big topic this week, and expanding that scope of practice for them. So it's going to be a busy week overall with the highway plan and Scope Week.
All right, Mr. Josh Waters, we appreciate it, sir, and I'll see you at the Marble Palace.
All right, we'll see you down there, Paul. Thanks.
All right, thank you, folks.